When OP finds herself in a sexless marriage, a guy who likes to flirt with her at work seduces her in his truck. After being ridden with guilt, OP decides to come clean to her husband, but that's when some new truths are discovered. To find out how this story ends, get yourself a coffee and grab a bowl of popcorn so we can get into it.
I'm 35, my husband's 38, and we've been married for about 7 years. He's my best friend, and I love him dearly. But the problem is, while we get along great and love each other, there isn't much affection or intimacy. Even when we do have sex, it's really just about him. I've tried talking to him about this, and he says that he'll work on it, but sometimes it's brushed off, and even led to us having an argument. This has resulted in me having self-esteem issues and feeling very frustrated.
We've all been there.
At my job, there's an older guy called Darren, and he's 49 years old, and he always tried to flirt with me. He's the supervisor of a different department, and whenever he asked me out, I'd always decline, letting him know that I'm married. He's separated, but I've never liked him because he's cocky and very full of himself. Anyway, one night after a small but irritating argument with my husband, I decided to meet up with a couple of friends at a karaoke bar, and of course, Darren happened to be there. The friend I was with had to take someone home because they were having a minor family issue, but I chose to stay because another friend was meant to come, but in the end, she never showed up. Darren asked if he could buy me a drink, and even though I'm not much of a drinker and had already had one, I ended up saying yes because he kept asking. I got a bit tipsy, and he kept flirting and complimenting me, and by the end of it, one thing led to another, and we ended up having sex in his truck. I sobered up very quickly afterwards, and then went home and immediately jumped into the shower. I felt beyond guilty, and was so nervous. I basically avoided my husband after that, and when I went back to work, Darren was smirking at me and tried to flirt, but I told him that it would never happen again.
She's lying. We know.
Later that week, me and my husband got into a huge argument about intimacy and his lack of effort. The feeling of being unwanted is terrible. Soon after, I got a message from Darren asking to meet up and talk. I know that I shouldn't have, but I really did go with the intention of talking it out and making it clear that this wasn't going to continue. As you might have already guessed, though, we ended up having sex at his place. This cycle continued off and on from February to August. I was constantly fighting with my husband about being unsatisfied and feeling unwanted, and Darren was capitalizing on it. Obviously, this was all my fault, and I've regretted it all, and I finally ended things with Darren. He still tried to flirt with me, but I tried to ignore it, and things still weren't going well with my husband. He hasn't agreed to couples counseling, so I don't know what to do. I know that I don't want an affair, and I want to remain faithful, but I also want to feel wanted. I feel stuck. Even though I haven't told my husband about any of this, I have gotten close, but it feels like stepping off a cliff.
If things are so bad in your relationship that you've resorted to cheating on your partner, you should pack your bags and leave. While OP says that she wants to be faithful to her husband, her actions say otherwise. There is an update to this story, which we'll share with you after checking out some of the comments, so stay tuned.
Boo Boo Kitty says, I wouldn't touch couples counseling until you get to the root of why you cheated without blame shifting to your spouse. Relationship problems are 50-50, but your affair has nothing to do with your husband and everything to do with you. Disclose your affair because he has every right to make a decision and decide if reconciliation is something he wants to pursue with you. He deserves agency. I highly recommend going to HR and reporting your supervisor, but to be frank, leaving your current employment is a better option. The OP responds and says, reporting him would probably get me fired, and we aren't in a position where I can risk that. But yeah, a different job may be best, and yes, I will have that conversation with him first. Camping Dad says, first off, you need to tell your husband. He deserves to have agency in the relationship because you removed his informed consent when you chose that it was no longer monogamous. Trust me when I say the truth will come out, and the later, the worse. Tell him everything, don't wait for him to find out. Second, nothing that your husband did or didn't do caused you to have an affair. Were you feeling unwanted? Maybe. Was it his lack of attention that caused your affair? No, those were your choices, and you chose to betray your husband. Do not blame him. His actions had nothing to do with your decisions. You could have pushed for counseling or done a number of other things. Your affair was selfish and a reflection of nothing more than you. You need to get into therapy to address these issues. Maternal therapy says, "How did the supervisor of another department get your number to call you anyway? The fact is, it appears that you planned this. It doesn't appear to have just happened. If you never wanted it, you could have contacted HR the first time he crossed your boundary. We both know that you didn't create a boundary with him because the flirting was probably mutual. If you're not happy in your relationship and your husband isn't willing to meet you halfway, leave. You should never cheat. When your husband finds out, he will never see you in the same light again. You will miss the way he sees you now because it will be gone forever, and it will be all your fault. Do the right thing and level with him before he finds out some other way."
As promised, there was an update to this story, so let's get into it.
I planned on writing my husband 2 letters, one that was very detailed and one that was straight to the point, and I would have made him choose one. I also felt like I should do this after getting a new job, but I was still contemplating whether to do it sooner. In any case, this is where things really take a serious turn. My husband's phone kept going off last night when he was sleeping. I've never snooped through his stuff, and I never planned to, but a woman's name popped up, so I looked. I figured it might have been a family member or something, but it turns out that it was a chick asking if she was still going to see him because he hadn't updated her.
How the tables have turned.
I was shocked, so I went through all the messages. She was a 19-year-old chick who works at a cafe near our house. I immediately woke him up and asked him about it, and after a back and forth, he confessed that he's been seeing her for about a year. I was speechless, but then I confessed to my own affair, which started in February. He lost it and started yelling, cussing, and calling me names. I said, "Did you forget about what you just confessed to?" And he replied with, "I don't care," and kept yelling. I started laughing uncontrollably, and to the point that he just stared at me. I was laughing and then started crying and screamed, "Screw you. Screw you for making me beg all this time." Then I caught myself somehow and went to take a long shower. When I got dressed, he asked if we could talk, and I told him, "Sure, when I get back." I went to the cafe where the girl works, got a drink, and asked if the girl was in. When she came out, I asked her, "So you've been sleeping with my husband?" She was speechless, but I told her, "I'm not mad at you, you're young, but that's a dangerous game to play, and it's not worth it.
Look who's talking."
If you've ever been to my house, please never do so again, but again, I'm not mad at you." She said, "Okay," with tears in her eyes, and then I left to go home. I got back home and told my husband about what happened at the cafe. I let him know that I shouldn't have yelled at him, and we started talking. Throughout the conversation, though, he kept trying to make excuses as to why what I did was worse. I couldn't even take in a lot of it and ended up telling him, "Our marriage isn't a marriage. What you did and what I did were equally bad, and our marriage wasn't good before all this. I'm not mad at you, and actually, it all makes sense now. It's like I finally got the answer to why you haven't been affectionate towards me. I'm not mad. Just done. And you've obviously been done too, and that's okay." He continued being mad and left. I went to check his laptop, and there were videos of him and the girl from the cafe, but there were also videos of 2 other girls that he made over the past 3 years. So basically, karma is undefeated. I deserve this. I'm crushed. This wasn't how I thought my marriage would go. I'm so broken and feel physically numb. But I also feel like I knew my marriage was over and I should have just called it. Instead, though, I became something I never wanted to be and did things I shouldn't have, and now look. This is why I can't be mad at him. How could I? But yeah, it's over. I'm not sure what I'll be doing in terms of our living situation, but our marriage is done. I'm sad. I'm ashamed and stunned at how everything has fallen apart. And there's nothing I can do about it but be better in the future. I will try talking to my husband again because I want us to be fine. The marriage is over, we both did wrong, but I don't hate him. We just held on when we should have let go.
This marriage sounds like a total mess. A mess that could have been avoided if OP and her partner acted like grown-ups and communicated their issues. I will never understand why people jump into marriage these days while they're still unable to do the things that will ensure the success of a relationship. If you can't talk about your problems effectively, stay single until you're ready to think and act like a mature human being. Before we head off, though, let's check out the conversation in the comments.
PRB says, "At least you're smart enough to realize that there's no working on a marriage like the one you're in. You would just end up hating each other. I'm sorry it came to this, and if you do nothing else, promise yourself that you're done being a cheater." Clearly, he needs to do the same, but as you said in your post, be a better partner for the next person you care about. Tell them about all this and the work I'm sure you're going to do to make sure you don't do it again. Communication is a wonderful thing. The OP responds and says, "Thank you, yes, that is the plan. I will work on myself and get to the root of my own issues. I really hope he does the same as well." Beginning Stop says, "That's rough, OP. Both of you were in the wrong, but you finally have answers for the dead bedroom. He's trying so hard to be mad at you when he's been doing you dirty for years. Take pictures of any evidence before he drags your name through the mud. I'm glad you confronted the girl, too." The OP responds to this Redditor and says, "Yes, I have the evidence just in case. I don't want things to get more messy, just a simple separation. And yeah, the girl is young. Hell, I was doing stupid stuff at 35. It was important for me to let her know that I wasn't mad at her, in case down the line she feels guilty, which I could tell that she did. But also, I wanted her to know that it's not worth the headache to be in that situation."
Hopefully, OP is able to recover from this disaster and not repeat the same mistakes again in the future. And honestly, if things are really that bad in your relationship, call it a day. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Coffee and Popcorn, and I can't wait to see you on the next one.